Good evening and welcome to Psych Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight and I'm sitting down tonight with Kathy, the writer of The Bone Hacker. Now, our audience will know a lot of your work, and here's why. Not only is this a book, but you've got a whole series out there that's enjoyable to listen to, but your characters are the basis for the Bone TV show that is murder mystery and true crime with FDI and a very wonderful. I don't know, how do you describe her, because she's the character is a writer, she's she coroner, but she's also like the whole arc there for me was her really learning how to connect with people past their bones.
I think of book Tempe and
Okay.
TV Tempe. There's two versions.
Yeah, there's two versions.
So I think you're referring more to the TV version of Tempe.
Right.
She is a bit more social. She's younger than the book Tempe. She's in Washington, D.C., rather than book Tempe tends to move between the Carolinas, North Carolina, and Quebec in Canada, whereas TV Tempe is in Washington, D.C.
Right, so, at the Jefferson Center.
At the Jefferson Institute, yeah. So there are differences between the two. And TV Tempe is a bit more socially awkward. She's younger, she's socially awkward. But I think if you watch the whole series, if you were to binge all 12 seasons of the show, you see how that character has evolved and what a brilliant job Emily Deschanel has done with that character.
Right. And then book Tempe I think of her as the older version. Like, these are the letters from one to the other.
Yeah, and when the TV show first came on back in 2005, I guess it was. That sounds about right.
Yeah, that is right, because that's about when I started working the networks, and the replay would come on, and I would fall asleep to it, and then I started researching, okay, where's this character from? And that's when I started discovering your books.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm an audio listener.
Okay, good.
So I would flip those on when I couldn't, to fall asleep and then wake up. That's why when you came in, I'm like, oh, you put me to bed more times than in my life in years.
There you go.
But
what I started to say is, if you watched all 12 seasons, I think what Emily did portraying the character was just brilliant. The way the character grows and evolves and changes over the course of those years.
I would agree. How much of either Tempe is your body of work? Because you have an impressive body of work.
Well, I'm a forensic anthropologist. She's a forensic anthropologist. When I sat down to write the first book, which was Deja Dead, came out back in 1997, I had no training in creative writing. So I figured I would just write a book, the kind of book I like to read. That's what I'm going to write. And I figured it would be easier to just base my main character on myself. I wanted it to be, I write murder mysteries, but they're science driven. The solution is science driven. So I wanted them to be forensic thrillers. And I don't think there were any back in the day when I started out. So did that answer your question?
That answered my question greatly, because there wasn't. Like, that's, I think, is the difference with your books and a lot of the other murder mysteries out there. They aren't science driven. They aren't like, if you go and Google it, no, that's actual fact that they can actually tell, like, where you grew up by the minerals in your bones.
They can, yes, they can tell that. And the last where you, were for the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 years of your life, because you were eating, or drinking the local water. And
so, and I think that's one of the hallmarks of your books, is if it's in the book, it's real. Like, you don't take any writer's constitution on that. So I love that about your work.
Yeah, I do try. I put science in them, but people don't want to read a textbook. So my rule of thumb is you have to keep it brief. You have to keep it jargon free. You can't use any of the terminology we use amongst ourselves as scientists, and you have to keep it entertaining.
Yeah. Is there any changes you'd like to do? Looking at the body now?
Any changes?
Yeah, look, you know how you go, you write one, you live with a character for a while.
Long time. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, what, 94, I would estimate, if you came out in 97 with Deja Vu?
Started the first one in 94.
Yeah. Any changes there?
Well, the early books, the early days, we didn't have the big gorilla in forensic science, which is now DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So we relied a lot more for identification anyway. We relied a lot more on fingerprints and dental records.
Mm-hmm.
Once DNA entered the picture, once cell phones, we didn't have cell phones, I think, when I wrote the first book.
No.
So those change a lot of the dynamic of your story. If you can immediately phone somebody up, no matter, or receive a call, no matter where the character is. I mean, you have to deal with that. It was kind of easier back in the day when people could be absent and not in contact for a while.
Right. And there could be disappearances and time pages and that type of thing. Has your writing process changed?
It has changed in the sense that when I wrote the first book, I was teaching university full time. I was faculty at University of North Carolina. I was commuting between the Carolinas and Canada to do forensic casework. And I had 3 kids at home.
Right.
So it's now more leisurely. I had to get up early in the morning and write. I'd get up at 6 and write for a couple hours before going onto campus. I'd write on weekends and on vacations, anytime I could squeeze it in. I now have the luxury. I'm retired from the university and I'm largely retired from casework. So I have the luxury of being a full-time writer. So I don't fire out at dawn anymore. I do try to get at the keyboard, I don't know, by about 8:30. And I stay with it until 2:30. I write every chance I get because in the early days I had to. If I had a free block of time, I had to write. I still carry that habit over, I think.
Now, do you do like plotting and the outline work and all the advice that writers get, or are you just what they call a pantser, where you just sit down and just write?
I'm much more of a pantser. My son is a writes. He and I wrote a series of young adult books together.
Okay.
And then basically, he dumped me, and he now writes his own series. But he's a real plotter. I mean, he has colored cards, and every scene and every chapter and every character is all plotted out before he ever sits down to write the book. I don't do that. I outline the first, I don't know, 6 or 8 chapters with just a little paragraph for each one. I know where the book is going. I know what the ending's going to be. I don't necessarily know who the villain is going to turn out to be. Okay. But I just sit down then and I do some research. I've chosen the setting. This one is set in the Turks and Caicos Islands in the Caribbean. Right. I know what core characters I'm going to use. I have a sense of what new characters I'm going to introduce and what the plot line is, what the crime is, and what the science is going to be that I'm going to introduce to solve it. But then it's a free flow of how I get from the beginning to the ending that I foresee.
Okay. Interesting. How do you choose the crimes? Because you've got a large, like you've worked, you worked on the World Trade Center. You get called in for special ones.
Sometimes it's based on my activities. The first books were very much based on actual casework that I did. Deja Dead was based on a serial murder case in Montreal. Deadly Decisions was based on a biker war we had going back in the 90s, and the Hells Angels would cut off the hands and the heads of their victims, and so they would end up in my lab for identification. Anyway, each one looks at a different aspect of crime and a different social issue. I've dealt with human trafficking. I've dealt with the trafficking in endangered species. This one, I'm taking a look at hacking, at cybercrime.
Which is an interesting plot. How cybercrime connects to bone and I'm halfway through the book, so please don't ruin it for me.
Okay.
But how that connects around and really pulls together.
So what I do is I look for something that I think will be of interest to people 2 years down the road, because it takes a year to write the book. and then the book is in production for a year. So if something triggered, this one was a rip, as we would say in the writer's room for Bones, ripped from the headlines. I saw an article. Yeah, there was an expose in the New York Times about spyware, particularly about Pegasus, which is a very powerful spyware, and how various governments were buying it. And it can be inserted into the average citizen's iPhone without them knowing it, without them having to download anything and have it, attached to it. And I thought, well, that's a scary idea. So let's take a look at that for the next book.
Interesting. Do you keep like clippings of news articles and stuff you run across and then pull it together, or?
Sometimes I do. I have a file called Future Stories, and sometimes I'll clip something and put it in there. I've never gone to it to use it, but I do have one.
Okay. What advice would you have for someone getting into the business with a very longevitical series?
Oh, well, what I just said, write every chance you get. You can't say to yourself, well, I'm not in the mood, or the muses are not with me today, or it's a bad day. If you have your block of time, you should sit down and write and produce something, because you can't edit a blank page. So you really need to. And even if it's, an hour a day or 2 hours a week, be committed. And during that time, just sit at that keyboard and write.
Right. Okay. With, overall, and I don't remember, but have you ever had a psychic in your stories? I know that there's been a few that's been like questionable.
We had a psychic in the TV show. By Cyndi Lauper.
Right.
Played the psychic in the show, but I don't think I've had a psychic in the books.
Okay. When you're working the other job, not the writing job, but the other job, do you like, we hear like Dr. G, who's a little bit, has been on TV, that type of thing, talks about hearing the body. And I think Tempest has made comments in the TV show, I know for sure. In the book, I think there's a few parts of like being able to tell, do you hear?
Yeah, the bone whispering. We used to use that term in the writer's room also. I hear in the sense that the bones do tell me things. It's not an audio signal or anything like that, but if you're trained in the human skeleton and you're a good observer and observe the details, those details will tell you the story of who that person was, and perhaps even how they died and when they died, and maybe even where they died.
Right. What's your thoughts on the Long Island killer?
I'm glad they caught him. And I think, how did they catch him? Was it forensic genetic genealogy? I don't know.
That's an emerging field right now. It's caught on TV, like all the murder and stuff, true crime stuff coming out. It's like, they solved it by familial DNA, which we're seeing play out in the Illinois case.
Which was the Illinois case?
The what is this? The 4 college students that were killed by knife. The dude is not connected.
Okay, that was Idaho, I think. That was
Idaho,
Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So you're on the right track. I'm not sure exactly. There was some classic detective work going on in that case. A car that was spotted in the area, and the sheath that was left behind, and DNA from the sheath, I think, that was left behind at the crime scene. So that was a real piece of detective work.
Yeah, and a real piece of forensic work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Do you watch it, or do you see enough of it, like at work, that you don't want to see it when you get home?
Do I watch true crime shows?
Well, not only true crime, but like active investigational stuff, like these update murder, the Idaho case or the Long Island serial killer. There's I don't know what has gone on with Idaho, but there's a lot going on over there. You have also the, what is Lori, whatever, and that was the whole weird crime thing going on?
I don't specifically seek it out. If it comes on, I might get sucked into it and watch a case. And often when I watch those, I see my colleagues. I'll go, "Oh, I know him," or "I know her." Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I just wondered because I know some authors get really sucked into their genre, and it's like they get all into it, and then others don't want to see it. And it's, like, example, if you're writing, true crime, you don't watch true crime on TV until you're looking for research.
I don't really do research in that way, no.
Yeah.
Because those crimes have been solved and they've also been exposed in the media, the very fact that they're on TV. So people know
Right.
what happened in those cases.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. So what do you do when you're not listening to Bones and not killing a keyboard?
Oh, I do what everybody else does. I have a beach house. I'll head down there. It's on a barrier island off of Charleston, South Carolina. So I'll head down there on Sunday. I have 6 grandkids, so some of them they'll come in and out in different clumps.
Right.
So I spend a lot of time, as much as I can, with the grandkids. I play pickleball. What else do I do? Nothing extraordinary. I swim laps. I go out with friends.
But that is extraordinary because we see that in your writing. We see that in you taking time to, like, give life to it.
Well, I hope that shows.
It does.
Can't bring the grandkids in. Tempe's not quite that old yet, but I'm vague on her age. And one of the issues you have to deal with in a continuing character series is, how do you age your characters? Some authors have chosen to age them in real time. Some authors choose to just freeze them in time. I'm kind of a hybrid. She ages, but not in real time.
No, not my book, but it isn't like a new book comes out every year of her life.
Yeah, she's not a year older in every book. And the books are set roughly a few months apart. Like if I write one that's in winter, the next one will be, in spring, that kind of thing.
That type of thing. Yeah. Do you find it difficult when you're writing to remember, like, okay, what, I made this character, not a main core character, but like, a character that just enters a couple, to remember, like, okay, what was that about? What was his niche? What was her niche? Or do they just live in your head?
I keep a character file. I keep lots of files. I don't do a lot of outlining before I write, but I do kind of a post-mortem outline. Every time I finish a chapter, I put it into the outline with a little summary of what went on in that chapter so that I can go back. If I need to go back, I know what's happening. I keep a character file, and I have at least the name of each character and sometimes a little blurb about them as well. As I'm writing, I write each chapter is a file. I open a new file, I finish the chapter, and then when I'm satisfied with it, I put it over into the master file so that I'm building the whole book in the master file. And I can use that to do keyword searches if I need to go back and see in this one what color were Detective Monk's eyes or something.
Right.
Go back and see what I said.
Very interesting. Do you get pressure? Because you've got a very successful character here.
Well, I'm on a book a year contract, so there is that pressure. I mean, my publisher, I've never missed a deadline, so my publisher doesn't, put a lot of pressure on me. But that could be because they know I'll deliver.
You'll deliver
in reasonable amount of time of the deadline.
Yeah,
but I know they're out there. I know they're out there waiting for it. So.
But they don't come and go, okay, this, your last one was a mega sell. We need to put out 2 of them next year.
No, they have not done that. No.
Wow.
And a book a year is that
a lot.
That's a lot. That's cranking it out. And I don't want to compromise the quality of my writing in order to increase the quantity.
Right. And I think that's highly important.
I think so too.
Getting that together. Who do you like? Who are you reading?
I tend to read the darker stuff. I like Harlan Coben and Dennis Lehane and Michael Connolly and Karen Slaughter and Tana French. I think she's Irish, or she lives in Ireland anyway.
I haven't heard of that.
I'm sorry?
I haven't heard of her. I'll have to check that out.
She's good. What she'll do is, in one book, have a minor character, and then in her next book, that'll become the major character.
Okay, so it switches points of view.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. I might try that. I'm creating a character in book 23, which I'm currently writing, which I may see if I want to make her a major character in the next book.
Okay. I don't know. I like Tempest.
Sorry?
I like Tempest. Let's keep her, please.
Okay. Well, she'll be around for at least 23. We'll see.
Cool. Okay. Is there any book you wish you could go back and redo? Now that we've, because we've progressed more than 20 years in science.
Not really. I've had occasion to go back to Deja Dead and to look something up, and I would use fewer similes and metaphors. I used a lot of those in the early books. So hopefully my writing has gotten a little less packed with that.
Okay. Interesting. All right, darling. Well, thank you for joining us. Where can we get this, and when is this one hitting the shelves?
That one is on the shelves in the US. It just, as of Tuesday, it just came out today, I think, in Canada, and it came out last Thursday, maybe. It's out in the UK, so I think Australia. Wow. Yeah, it's out. It's out there.
It's out. And are you moving into other markets?
I'm in a lot. I don't know. I mean, a lot of foreign markets. I don't know.
Cool. Oh, okay. All right. Well, you have a lovely evening, and come back with the next one. I look forward to where this one's going.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back.
Hey everybody, Lady Gwendolyn here from Rowan Temple of Light, and I'm here to tell you about our events this summer. First up is Beltane in the Hills, May 13th, and that is from 1 to 6. We have entertainment, we have a bunch of vendors, we have a fairy photo shoot. It's going to be exciting. You having any questions, reach out to Earth Magic or to myself. After that, we have Central West Virginia Pagan Pride, August 19th. That's at Holly Gray Park from 11 to 5 for the day. And we will have Sarah Masters coming down from Pittsburgh to be our keynote speaker. We have some great classes for that. So if you want to get involved, reach out to RowanTempleOfLight@gmail.com, or just follow us along on Facebook at Rowan Temple of Light, and we look forward to seeing you out in the community. See you there.
Welcome back, goblins! My name is Jason, and I am the host of the Esoteric Book Club, a podcast that examines titles on the magical, paranormal, the mysterious, and the strange. I release 2 episodes a month, in which I review books on esoteric topics, recap news of the weird, and conduct interviews with authors, practitioners, and experiencers. The Esoteric Book Club can be found on every major podcast service, or can be streamed directly from esotericbookclub.org.
Hi, I'm Aeson Knight. I provide tarot readings covering everything from love and relationships to your life questions and your most spiritual answers. And also, I provide a lot of guidance in finances and divorces and all those relationship problems. So, if you'd like to get a reading from me privately, not on air, you can feel free to do so by visiting aesonknight.com and booking your appointment. I also provide on-demand services, so if your life is a little chaotic, you can go ahead and click that Call Now button there on my site. It'll connect you to Keen, and if you've not been with Keen before, you'll get 3 free minutes to talk with me, so that's great for a quick answer question. All right, guys, back to the show. Enjoy. Bye, y'all.
Hi, I'm Tracy Van. I provide a blended reading consisting of mediumship, psychic, and tarot cards. A reading from me can cover any guidance you need from relationships with your partner or your family, spiritual, financial, any questions you may need clarity on. If you would like to book an appointment with me, check out my website, tracyvann.com. That's TracyVann.com. I have bookings from 15 to 60 minutes you may choose from. That helps if you just have a quick question, need an answer, or if you're looking for a reading in more depth, I'm here to provide the guidance and clarity for you. Let's just figure it out. Bye.
Well, good evening. Welcome, Joe. How are you, darling?
I'm doing okay. How are you this evening?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Been playing with my schedule, as you noted. Yes, I will be changing my hours. Yes, I
Working
have.
on that schedule.
I am. I'm cutting back to 50 hours a week of open network time, so I can work on some other projects. Get the studio cleaned up, take the trash out, decorate it a little bit. Breathe. All the things.
All the things. All the things.
So that's the fun stuff. What have you been up to?
Well, I was on the road today. I had to tell someone their printer died. It was very sad. It was
Did you
very
have a
old.
funeral?
We had a moment of silence. It was a very quick one, but we had a moment of silence. Like it had been a great printer, but it had officially died.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of sad.
Right.
Always hate telling people it's so broke I can't fix it.
Right.
So yeah, no, been moving into HB90 and trying to run that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's basically where I'm at.
For you so far.
Oh, how is that going for me so far? It has its moments. Like there's sometimes I feel like I'm doing really well with it, and there's other moments where I'm like, oh my god, what have I done? So it's an adjustment.
It is. Okay, we got some techie news.
Oh, we have techie news.
Yes, I'm going to be sending it to you, and let's talk about this.
Okay.
And then we will talk about trolling a fake psychic. Shannon threw that topic up.
Ooh.
So let's take on woman fired after company used keystroke technology to monitor her work from home.
All right, so a major insurance company used keystroke technology on an employee's work laptop to test whether she was working her designated hours, and it ended terribly for her. The Fair Work Commission has rejected an unfair dismissal application brought by former Insurance Australia Group, IAG, consultant Susie Shenko, finding she was fired for a valid reason of misconduct. According to the Commission's published findings, Shenko was responsible for creating insurance documents meeting regulatory timelines and monitoring work from home compliance, among other significant roles. Ironically, her own work from home performance marked the end of her 18-year career with the company. According to the FWC findings, Shenko was fired on February 20th for missing deadlines and meetings, being absent and uncontactable, and failing to complete a task, which caused the industry regulator to fine IAG. A month later, Shenko claimed to the FWC her employer had a premeditated plan to remove her from the business and that she was targeted due to her mental health issues. According to the online findings, Shenko received a formal warning in November 2022 about her output and was put on a performance improvement plan. She was subject to a detailed review of cyber activity, which analyzed the number of times she physically pressed her keyboard on 49 working days from October to December. The review found she did not work her rostered hours for 44 days started late on 47 days, finished early on 29 days, and performed 0 hours of work on 4 days. On the days she did log on, she had very low keystroke activity and recorded 0 keystrokes over 117 hours in October, 143 hours in November, and 60 hours in December. She averaged 54 keystrokes per hour over the duration of her surveillance, which showed she was not presenting for work and performing work as required. In a formal meeting about the review, Shinko said she did not believe for a minute the data was true, but showed no evidence that she'd been online and working when the report showed she had. Sometimes the workload is a bit slow, but I've never not worked, she told her managers, according to the FWC findings. I mean, I may go to the shops from time to time, but that is not for the entire day. I need to take some time to consider this, and I will put forward a response. In a written response, Shinko said she'd looked at the data to seek an explanation for the missing hours, but really can't recall why or how it's that low. I've tried to go through emails and messages to see if I can explain it, she wrote. I have been going through a lot of personal issues, which has caused a decline to my mental health, and unfortunately, I believe it has affected my performance and my work. Shinko said she always started on time, but had a few things going on due to an injury. She claimed she would send a Teams message to advise managers when she had medical appointments and would make up the time afterward. She said she was confused and shocked at the data, doubted its accuracy, and said she used other devices than her laptop to log on or to log in when she had system issues. According to the FWC ruling, Shinko attended one Microsoft Teams meeting with her manager regarding her performance with the word fuck written across her hand. Oh, FWC Deputy President Thomas Roberts ruled the evidence showed Shinko was not working as she was required to do during her designated working hours while monitored. He found Shinko could not provide a credible explanation for the data to her employers or throughout the FWC proceedings. Roberts wrote that while Shinko said she used her phone for certain tasks, her employer had shown the need for her to use her laptop to complete her duties. The application was dismissed for a valid reason of misconduct, Roberts wrote. I have little doubt that the factors underlying the applicant's disconnection from work were serious and real. The situation was regrettable given Shinko's long period of satisfactory service, Roberts wrote. Nonetheless, I am satisfied that the dismissal of the applicant was not harsh, unjust, or unreasonable. The applicant's application is therefore dismissed.
Okay.
So yeah,
okay, let's dig into the techie side of this. First of all, what's a keylog?
So a keystroke logger is a little bit of software that literally just takes the it acts as like an in-between.
Okay.
Now technically there are 2 versions of this. One is software based.
Mm-hmm.
One is a physical hardware base. So basically you would have a device that you would put in between the computer and the cord for the keyboard. That is one form of keystroke logger. What they used here was software driven.
Mm-hmm.
So they're basically pre-installing this little piece of software that just kind of sits in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you type on the keyboard, it records that.
Okay.
So it starts being possible to see all kinds of things.
Yeah.
From literally like what you are typing at any given moment.
Right.
Now it looks like in addition to a keystroke logger, they did some reporting software with that.
Okay.
So not only are they pulling the literal log up of every key
right.
she touched, but it looks like they also ran some modeling on it to get the data that, okay, she's only done this, she did this, she didn't do this, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I find it very strange to think. Granted, she's a manager, and so we're not expecting her to be doing data entry.
Right.
And she is in a compliance role, so she may be reading a fair amount. And I don't know if she's using some kind of like dictation software.
Right. question
that taken together.
Right. Well, what I found interesting in the story is she said she used her phone to log in.
Mm-hmm.
So would that they technically have to apply it to her laptop, or, and here's the or in this, would they just have it within their server?
No, you would have to install on each individual device.
Okay, so it wouldn't be tracked
So,
by username and password.
I mean, it technically would, because what I'm going to go with is this was a remote installed application from Active Directory.
Uh-huh.
And either they were storing the files in a place they could pull them from Active Directory or some other software.
Right.
Or like it was doing a phone home. So every time it got online, it would record a file. The day would end, it would transmit the file.
Right.
So generally, though, that's the rough idea of how they work. Each software is a little different. Each software has different like features. There can be a lot of debate as to is this like keystroke has been a hot topic.
Okay.
Like keystroke, mouse click has been a really hot topic in work from home.
Right.
As for, is this a legitimate measure of activity, productivity, etc.? And there have been a lot of work from homers that have found software or even physical solutions to move their mouse, either by displaying random input to the computer as a mouse movement, or literally physically move the mouse, or press a key. And there are some software solutions, there are some hardware solutions, there's a few different things going on there. Because of companies trying to use this to measure whether employees are on and working.
Right.
But the realities of that are, for some positions, that may not be legitimate.
Okay.
In terms of what, if you're doing data entry, keystroke logging makes perfect sense. Like you are literally just taking, and putting in data. So if you're not typing on your keyboard, I don't know what you're doing. It's not working. For other positions, it starts to make less and less sense.
Right.
If you're, in a managerial position and you spend most of your time in team meetings and, various activities like that,
right,
you send a few emails, it really becomes debatable whether what you're showing in keyboard activity is really gonna measure up,
right,
because you're not data entry.
right.
Like your job isn't based, it's not a production thing. You're not, this isn't widgets and you're making widgets, and each widget you assemble counts towards a final number. The however you have to do whatever you have to do is more so based on like an intellectual labor or a communications labor, not necessarily in physical activity.
Right.
So there is a lot of debate there that can be had. Is it legitimate for her to have such low keystroke given her job functions? And there could be some argument there, especially if she's using any kind of adaptives. Again, like, speech to text.
Right.
Or if she, uses her phone to type everything up and then sends it later.
Right.
Or if she even has to.
Right. Well, there's been a hot button topic, however, in Europe over the use of cookies and the use of tracking data, because they own their data in Europe. The United States, we don't own our data. What's your view on that?
there's where you have to get careful. Is it all kind of comes down to who are you working for, what do they own, what are you using, and when we talk about ownership of one's own data,
Right.
and there are obvious exceptions for this, that should be pretty apparent. But generally, when we're talking about like cookie problems, we're talking about just users of a website, just people trying to buy your product, read your content, go to your website, whatever. The general consensus is that data of who you are, where you live, what you're searching for, what websites you're going to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that you own.
Okay.
Now there are exceptions. When, because it's sort of like, yes, you have freedom of speech, but if you stand on a street corner calling your boss a fucking moron, you really should expect to get fired.
Depending on the boss.
Okay. Well, yeah, but like that, like we can all follow that one. It makes sense. Okay. Sort of the same thing can apply, depending upon what you're tracking and how you're tracking it, on an employee's machine that is owned by the company.
Right.
And that's always a very important distinction, is who owns it.
Right.
And I've long said, if you're doing stupid shit on your employer's laptop, you are begging to be fired.
Right.
I don't care if you work on the road. I don't care if you're in sales. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if it's a Disney movie. That is employment. That is employer-owned equipment.
Right.
That's the company's. They can control and install and do pretty much whatever they want to, with some reasonable expectations for privacy. That's why webcams and audio recording are typically a real, like, don't screw with those for employers. Because there is a reasonable expectation that as you work from your home, things are going on around you that may not be, that are not something that you can control. Or nor should you have to within your own home. As long as you show up professionally for meetings, as long as you professionally conduct yourself in your business role. If at 2:00 in the morning you're having a really wild conversation, your employer need not have the ability to just turn on a microphone and listen. So there are some caveats there as to what your employer can do.
Well, and you're talking employers. What about, because there's other employment options there, like consultants. Because us as psychics, a lot of time we're logging into a portal, we're using a website. How much monitoring can they get by with?
However much you agree to. You know that end user license agreement that, please click here to show that you have read the above. It really pays sometimes to read the above. Because there can be a lot of stuff in there. And pardon?
Like?
Well, if you're having to download a program and install it to work for a company, there's no telling what they're installing. There's no telling the levels. Pardon?
What if you're not downloading the program?
Well, if you're not downloading the program, you still may be getting cookie access. And for some, you might want to be careful with that. Moral turpitude is still a thing. Like, it's gone through many names: a morality clause, moral turpitude, you name it, it's got a few different names. So, if you're working for a church and they happen to be, and it's a mega church, and they happen to be running some sophisticated software on the back end that you're logging into an employee only site, and they're gathering cookie data, you could find yourself unemployed if you're going to porn sites and things that otherwise are illegal.
Right.
The question becomes, is there any legitimate, and so far I don't think those have become like big case items, because I don't think there are many that are doing it. In terms of cookies,
Right.
don't write it off. It'll probably be in the news next week. But you could make an argument there.
Okay.
Because depending upon the country, it may be perfectly acceptable to gain that data.
Okay.
It may be perfectly acceptable to go through that data. Because we haven't had a case that pushed the button yet.
Right.
That brought it into the, is it legitimate?
Right.
So right now, again, I don't think many companies are going to that level.
Okay.
Or if they are, they have not been busted doing it.
Okay.
But now, as for if you have to set up a user account on your system, to work for a company, say as an independent contractor, you're doing work from home, you have to install a software package. You need to be doing that on a computer that you don't use for anything but work. And then when you're using that computer, you need to only be working. That's
how much cookie data what can they get out of the cookie data?
Well, there's a lot of data stored in cookies. That goes everything from what sites you visit, what browser you're using, what operating system you're on, your location, IP addresses, searches, how you got to the site that you got to, what site you went to next.
Right.
On and on and on and on and on through that entire browser session.
Right. But could a business do exactly what this one did? By tracking like keystrokes or activity through just cookie data?
No.
Okay.
No, because, well, keystroke data is literally every key you're pressing on the keyboard.
Right.
So no, I mean, fundamentally no.
Right.
The closest you could get that would be to look at work product, as in what you submit to the website. If you're working through, say, a web-only portal, like you go to www.iag.employee.com or whatever. Whatever the business employee portal is that allows you to work from home, you could look at work product and try to get an average keystroke and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, like, you're not getting literal keystroke. When we talk keystroke logger, it is logging everything done on the keyboard.
Right.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what website you're on, no matter what application you're in, no matter what you're doing.
Right.
And it will log every backspace, every space, everything. You name it, it logs it. Whatever you type, it logs. Now, there's a big problem there. For a lot of users, like yay for computers and automation and being a savvy user, sometimes the amount of work product and the number of keys pressed will not add up.
Okay.
For instance, if you work entirely within, like, say, mail merge,
Right.
you have a list of customer information, you have set up in Word to push the two files together to do a mail merge, and then send emails, send letters, create report, whatever you're doing with it. None of that's going to count.
Okay.
If you're handed a list of customers and you do a bunch of manipulation through mouse clicks on it, and then you turn around and you run a mail merge with a document you created, I don't know, she was there for 18 years, so 16 years ago or whatever, or last week or 2 months ago or last year or whatever, it's not going to count that.
Okay.
You have legitimate work product. You did a thing.
Right.
It has a business function.
Right.
It doesn't represent, like, because one, you're being a sophisticated user who is not going to blindly and stupidly type the same, whatever, email, letter, etc., 1,000 million times over the course of your career. You created it once and you just keep reusing it. So you take the list, you merge with the file, and you're done.
Right.
Now, you may have to do more with that, but again, it's logging keystrokes. If you didn't type the email, you didn't type the name, you didn't type any of the stuff, you have no keystrokes.
So in your IT career, have you dealt with this in one way or another?
Honestly, no, it hasn't come up. Directly keystroke loggers, no.
Okay.
Now I have had to do monitoring of employees through phone systems, because that was basically their unit of work product, or that was the assumed or reported form of, like, wage theft, or not wage theft, time theft.
Right.
That was made, and that was a big deal working in a call center. Was that either someone was being inappropriate on the phone in general, like they're talking to customers inappropriately,
right?
Or they're, using the phone to keep calling, coworkers and chit chat instead of work. Or they're, not answering calls, not checking messages. Like, I had to do a fair amount of that.
Okay.
Which most modern phone systems, especially voice over IP systems, they can give you a lot of detail in reporting. Like, there's a lot of reporting that gets done.
Right.
And it is very easy to turn on all call recording, or to automatically page someone's phone every time you pick up. Again, I've set up both of those, and it's a silent monitor. Like, you pick up your phone, it kicks up you can, like, set it up, for instance, that every time you, the employee, pick up your phone, it goes ahead and notifies your manager or some other employee that you're making a call out. Like, it'll dial them and let them know, and then it lets them listen to everything you do.
Yeah. How fun. How fun.
Yes. In addition to all the individual, like, call placement reports that you can run straight out of the system at any point, like, whether you're doing it later or on the past, or you can sit there and watch it in real time as you dial one extension after another and spend 20 minutes talking to this little employee, and then they called this employee and you called that employee, and
that would be really annoying as an employer.
And usually it's really annoying to do.
Right.
I don't know many IT people who enjoy doing it.
Right.
Like, to be blunt, like, that is a level of monitoring that is like, nope.
Right.
Like, because it's spying on people. Point blank, it is.
Right.
We're well aware of that. The idea is that the business purpose involved is that you're not working.
Right.
If you're sitting on the phone for 20 minutes talking to your coworker about your husband,
Right.
who doesn't work there, then you're not being productive.
Right.
Especially if your whole job is to answer phone calls. So it really has less to do with what you're talking about, because God knows I've forgotten more things that I've heard than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that it wasn't work.
Right.
Now I've been on the receiving end of that.
Mm-hmm.
I should note. I actually had a boss that set me up with a silent monitor.
Ah.
Because he kept overhearing some of my conversations and kept thinking that I was like talking to friends.
Right.
And family and all these other, like, he just had this idea that I was sitting there at work, blatantly, openly talking to friends and family.
Yeah.
Only to find out that, no, I have really good relationships with my clients.
Right.
And some of them do call me just to chit chat.
Right.
And I personally feel that, if you want to talk to me for 20 minutes and you pay more in commissions to this company than my annual salary,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to do that a couple of times a month, I don't have a problem.
Right.
Like, I will go be a trained monkey for like $85,000 a year.
Right.
Because that's what you pay this company.
Right.
Like, you more than pay my salary. So, I mean, that's just me.
Understandable.
But yeah, he ended up very upset, and we had to have a long conversation later because he set up that call monitoring, I think, for a few months.
Uh-huh.
And we ended up having two conversations. The first one is, I was really surprised to find out you had this kind of relationship with our clients. And two, do you ever call someone in your family?
Okay.
Because the whole time he monitored, I did not have one friend, not one family member that I called or called me.
Right.
Not one. And I said, Sean, I have a personal cell phone, and everyone knows that if I'm at work, I'm working. So unless it's an emergency,
Mm-hmm.
One, send me a text message, but two, call and leave me a voicemail. And unless it's a severe emergency, in which time, keep calling until I pick up. Because about the third ring, I'll pick up the phone and be like, what?
Right.
Like, and I'm going to have that high adrenaline because you just called me 3 times in a row. You better have, like, dead, dying, or injured.
Uh-huh.
Like, just start with who, when, where, what, why, and how am I supposed to do anything?
Scream, holler, and beat them. All right, so let's take on the Shannon D suggestion here. Trying to decide how to troll them best or just ignore. Personally, I'd ask for them to read your cat and how their job position will be next month.
I would like a career reading for my cat.
Well, you don't tell them the cat.
Okay, I would like a career reading for Anna, a very dear, close family member.
No, I would like a career reading for Anna. Is she going to have a job next month? She's been having real difficulty here lately completing her task.
Oh, the answers could get fun. Give them your cat's birthday. Oh, see, but you got to be careful with that, Shannon. Like, that may give it all away because there's not many people that are calling in for a 10-year-old.
Well, no, you changed the date. You changed the year. Okay, and when they say your ancestors called to me, I love this one.
Were they in heat?
Huh?
Oh, sorry. I was still going the cat line. And I was like, were they in heat?
No.
So your ancestors
the
called
other one, really? So you must owe them money. And they will come back with, what do you mean? They're mobsters. If they keep it up, they'll break your knees.
Oh, yeah. Oh, oops. Sorry. Oopsie moment. I almost ended the show.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Oh, I was like two messages filtering, and I was just, who the fuck is messaging me that doesn't actually know me?
Right.
One is a celeb scam account, and the other was that.
But no, I would have fun with it. And I do. I get them all the time on TikTok, and I always have fun with them. So far, I've got a few that thinks that they're children. My ancestors are going to come collect their children. I think a few have bought knee braces, and one is questioning where the gun is. Took a lifetime to get some quiet. Or reply back that they're only asking if I renewed my car's warranty.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That'd be straight from your grandmother. She'd just do that for
fun. No, I think my grandmother has more important messages to tell me.
I know, but I think for you, she would have fun with it.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, we're trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. I can see that as being legitimate.
Speaking of cars, she would bitch me out.
Multiple ways from Sunday.
One, it's not a caddy. Two, it hasn't had an oil change. Three, it has a loan.
Yes. Oh, one of my buddies asked me what my grandpa's thing was about hot dogs after he passed. Never met the man, and I was just asking yourself, I haven't eaten hot dogs since I was 8, and I'm not starting now.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, so you have an asshole.
Well, yes, as do we all.
You want to know if you're the asshole? Let's go there. If someone cannot tell that Aeson hasn't gotten much rest and has been stressed in the office all day today, you're blind.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, and Shannon points out we all actually start as one. Literally. It's the first part of the body form.
Yeah.
So,
So is Joe the asshole?
Am I the asshole for moving my alcoholic dad in with me to essentially drink himself to death? My siblings are understandably upset, but have done very little to actually help since they've moved away. So obviously, this is a screwed up situation all around. My dad is 58 and a severe alcoholic. I am 22. I have a half sister who is 45 and a full brother who is 24. They live in different states. I did not stay behind to care for my dad, but I've really been his only support system. He has been in and out of rehab. He's been arrested for public intoxication, public indecency, DUI well over 20 times, and numerous other things that would probably break the rules to talk about them. This has been going on as long as I can remember. He is destitute, malnourished, and has advanced ARD, alcohol-related dementia, which is worse when he doesn't drink. He can't work, drive, or care for himself in any meaningful way. I've been there for all of it while my siblings left a long time ago and have done nothing other than an occasional check. My sister arranged for him to be put in a long-term care facility. She was not paying for it, state-funded. Fairly close to me. He was sober, but was caught several times stealing alcohol wipes to suck on them. I visited him twice, and it was like a horror show. I didn't realize places like this existed outside of the movies. During one of his coherent moments, he begged me to take him out. I told him the second he had access to alcohol, he'll drink again. He said he knew, but he's ready to die and he's at peace with it. I talked it over with my husband and we hired a specialist to examine my dad, and he said if he drinks, he has maybe 6 months left. We did a quick remodel on our home so my dad will have easy access to a bathroom, and we said we will buy him a 30-pack of cheap beer a day and he can stay with us until he's gone. Yes, it sucks. But on one hand, he has his family. He's not covered in bed bugs. He's clean and has entertainment. He's not stealing to fund his habit. He's not bothering the public, and he won't get arrested. My siblings think that he was going to get better in the facility and think I've signed him up for a death sentence. I told them that they are welcome to move him to a facility closer to them so they can be the ones to visit him and see his food covered in roaches and his baths being wiped down with chemicals. My sister said she can't because of her reputation as a real estate agent. My stomach hurt, I laughed so hard. And my brother said he doesn't want his kids to see their grandpa like that. Both ridiculous excuses, but they insist on being angry with me when I'm the one who's borne all the stress and heartache of seeing this in person. To me, this allows a man who has made some terrible choices in his life the ability to at least not linger in some hellhole for the next 10 years and die as crappy as he lived, but at least on his own terms. Am I the asshole? Edit. I can't believe how this blew up. I'm sorry I can't respond to everyone, but such a sincere thank you to the first few comments and the threads with all the extremely helpful and critical information that my husband and I did not know.
I don't think you're the asshole. But there's a however here. Here's the however. Don't count on 6 years. Don't count on 5 years.
Well, 6 months, I think, is what they were given.
Yeah. Okay. That's laughable. If he reaches for help, give him help.
Okay.
What's your thoughts?
I think we have this rosy idea of what it means to be elderly and in need of care, and it involves cookie baking grandmas, and took you fishing, and was there for you for every little league game grandpas. Both of whom went to church every week on Sunday and never did anything wrong in their entire life. Except for maybe that one time, but even then, like, they didn't have a choice. Which is not the reality we live in, is crappy people die too. So I don't think you're the asshole. I think you got handed a really unfortunate situation in which there are not Hallmark enders for. Like, there's no happy Hallmark ending to this. Generally speaking.
Right.
Now, I would point out that, you may want to be very careful, much like Aeson pointed out, that 6 months may not be 6 months.
Right.
Because most of the time when a doctor is evaluating a patient, they're taking their current condition and literally only adding 6 months of, like in this instance, 6 months of continued drinking would be all that it would take to do him in. Like, live the way he's lived, be malnourished as he's malnourished, be uncared for the way he's uncared for, and continue drinking.
All right.
Then he has 6 months. You may find that you'll come to a secondary crossroad, which is he may improve. Like, with the stability, with good meals, with proper care, like good nutrition, good meals, access to medication, doctor's visits, healthcare in general. That unfortunately, if you do this right, like as decent human beings as you sound like, you may have to reevaluate whether going into a rehabilitation facility might be a next step. Like, you might not be sentencing him to death. You may be getting him help on his own terms and acting as kind of a step down from the chaotic disaster that he was in to a kind of a midpoint where it's not everything he would normally be doing to himself, but it's not, so it's not as bad.
Right.
Even if it's imperfect.
Right.
And then be able to transition him to other forms of care.
Right. All right.
So
and, I have some comments here.
Okay. So my dad was such a bad alcoholic that he would have had a heart attack if he did. He would have a heart attack if he didn't have it. I'm sorry. My dad was such a bad alcoholic that he wouldn't have had a heart attack if he didn't
have a heart attack if he didn't have it.
Okay. My aunt would get mad. The doctor prescribed him booze to avoid the heart attacks and strokes that followed when he didn't have it. But like, she thought anyone who let him have it was the asshole. There is that theory, and usually that comes from someone who's either A, really on the teetotaler wagon of like, don't drink, never drink, not interested in drinking, thinks everyone who drinks is a bad person.
Sure.
Then there's the flip side of it, which is those who struggle to follow the bouncy ball, that yes, alcohol is what got him to this point, and now it's the crutch keeping him alive.
Right.
Because at this point, if you take it away, his body is so conditioned to it that this is all about holding equilibrium. That you take it away and his whole body starts to shut down because it doesn't know what the fuck's going on. Like, you just took away half my chemicals that I have learned to cope with, that I've adjusted other functions to cope with and deal with and manage. And now I have crap going through me that, or more importantly, I don't have crap going through me. So now I start trying to do what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. And that's too much. But and what's really weird is there's been a stance change on this. And this is what I'm talking about. When my dad, this is going back a ways, everybody. So before you jump on your bandwagon, back a ways.
Yeah. Stepping back through the years.
All right. There was a social drinking hour. Like, patients were brought out to the dining room to all have a beer. Or two. No more than two. Like, that was standard prescriptions in this Christian nursing homes. They had a beer or two each night.
Well, because, and that's sometimes a huge debate in nursing care. And it all boils down to, sometimes we forget they're adults.
Yeah.
They are sexually active adults. They are adults who can drink. They are adults who can smoke. They are adults who can vote. If they can pass the requirements, there are adults who can drive a car.
Right.
So you kind of have to like really like struggle to get through some people's heads that, again, these aren't all cookie baking grandmas and, church deacon grandpas. Like, some of them were sluts. And some of them were alcoholics, and some of them smoked like freight trains, and some of them did pot, and, some of them did coke, and, like, hi, you don't just lose this because you got old. You don't.
Right.
Like, you're an adult, you can make choices. Now, many of those can be really bad. But again, you're an adult and you can make the choice if you want to, as long as you can understand the consequences of your actions, which is a lot lower of a threshold than you think it is. Then you can do that.
Right.
Now, the illegal drugs become a bit of a problem in a nursing facility. We get that one. But as for things that are legal, it's actually easier to let patients in a nursing facility drink than to start the argument. And it's actually better for their care.
Oh, Shannon's all into this. Okay, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
So with the dad, they found a assisted living facility that, while it wasn't a sunshine and rainbows, they weren't no outside drinks allowed, and that would have killed him a lot sooner than 3 years. Eventually, it eventually took. Aeson, I worked at a
Episcopalian home for nuns and priests, and the food carts we sent, and on the food carts we sent wine up to the nuns and beers up to the priest. It wasn't just your dad's home.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, I remember having a patient, and she had terrible arthritis. I mean, just pure terrible. Like, she was in her 90s also. But every night we had to get her out of bed, put her in a wheelchair, and wheel her over to her refrigerator so that she can get in her refrigerator, get out her jar of grapes that have been soaked in white wine, and have 9 of them. It was her thing. We had to do it.
Okay. Well, that's what she paid money for.
Yeah. But we couldn't just go to the refrigerator, grab the jar of grapes, bring them over, and go, "Here, honey, here's your 9 grapes." I could never figure that one out.
Hey, for some people, it's an activity of daily living that she appreciated doing.
Right.
You might not have gotten her out of bed otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't call it a loss.
She was up at 7. This is the little Jewish lady. She was up at 7. We had to go in and help her get completely together.
Yep. I mean, these are things that like, and sometimes, and I totally get it from working, like the idea of working in a nursing home and having to do this for someone.
Right.
Like, you're not going to work. Like, you're not, like, what are you doing here? Like, you're not, like, what is this? This is one more thing on my to-do list I have to do.
Right.
When my life could be so much easier. So I get it from that perspective, but also, like, it's sometimes really amazing what one little thing or a couple of little things that may be one more task item for you that you're just like, oh God, that woman. What it means to her.
No,
like
you see,
this is her world.
It wasn't like one more task item. It was like, okay, why can't we? Because it's the end of the night. It's the end of the shift. Why can't we just? I even told him I will clock out so I am not on company time because this is West Virginia. It is winter. It is cold. She has arthritis.
Well, and it may have been a situation. The only thing I can think of is it may have not been recommendable with her medication.
Right.
And so you become a nurse dispensing in that moment. So you're condoning the behavior.
Right.
And you become liable for it if it harms her in any way.
Right. And that was
versus you pick her up and you pick her up and you roll her over. She did what she did. We are blameless.
Yeah. But no, like, she had her thing. Like, she was a particular patient, and was I thought highly interesting. especially how she dealt with her children. Like, she taught me a lot of life lessons. There's another patient I had that was 112 years old, and she taught everybody life lessons and thoughts and theories to look at things differently when she was livid.
Well, when she was lucid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully not just when she was mad. Right. But no, there, and that's the reality of getting older. Sometimes your brain is still there,
right,
or mostly some of the time. Your body's screwed.
Oh yeah.
I know that for one of my siblings, a ex in-law, their end of life went like that. Mind sharp as a tack. Body shot to hell.
Right.
Could have done anything in the world mentally. Physically was barely hanging on by a thread. And literally described it as, I'm trapped in the prison of my body.
Right.
Like, and it becomes debatable, is that worse? Because, you know, like almost it would be a gift at the point in which your body is so shot to hell you can't do anything, to have your mind go with it.
Right.
So at least you're not aware.
Mm-hmm.
Because effectively in this situation, they were sitting there 20, so to speak, 24/7. The lights are on, everyone's home.
Right.
Fully aware
right.
of everything going on, and it just absolutely gutted them.
Right.
So, hey Brenda.
Hello, Brenda.
But yeah, no. But no, I do think we oftentimes forget that just because we got older doesn't mean that we became perfect or wonderful or,
Yeah.
Like, no, we just got old. Right. Our habits got old too.
Or, the other part of that, and the part that, hits me with this one, and I'll make sure, and the poll's up, if you want to vote in it, is that it's his choice. Like, that's the thing that I think is missing in a lot of it, is it's his choice how he wants to cross.
Well,
and I think,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
And if it is, I want to cross drunk, smashed, out of my brain, then he should have it. Daddy and a saint.
Yeah. Now there is some debate that can be had with the ARD, the alcohol-related dementia. Because here's the problem with dementia. Is you have to be really careful sometimes. Is the moment of lucidity actually a moment of lucidity? And sometimes that can be a real nightmare. Because dementia, someone who has any form of dementia, I don't care what it is, it can leave you questioning and trying to guess and figure out, is that legit? Is that really who they are and what they think, or am I trying to color this situation with my perspective?
See, I have a weird way of dealing with dementia. I like to try to figure out where they are, because most times, and after we get past the fighting stage, I think that's stage 4. So one is auto forgiveness. Stage 4 is figuring out where in their life their tape is stuck.
Okay. Well, but then again, you still have the same issue there.
Right.
Do you really want 18-year-old you, or 22-year-old you, or 27-year-old you deciding life choices for like 87-year-old you.
To be honest, I've had the same stance since the beginning, so probably so.
Well, but that assumes that nowhere along the intervening 50, 60 years, 70 years, did you change your mind? Like right now, from the point in which you were, say, 18 to today, there are things you probably absolutely kept your stance on. But then as you go forward, are you still going to think those same things? And do you inherently want, like, the 18-year-old version of you that may have been like, oh my God, if I ever get like that, please just roll me off a cliff? Being the person that is making decisions for the 87-year-old that may have had a moment somewhere in their 70s that went, this is not as bad as I thought it would be.
Right.
Or, I think maybe 18-year-old me was kind of dumb.
Right.
And had some misconceptions and some really bad ideas. Then in turn making decisions for that future you.
Right.
Like that becomes a legitimate debate is, if you're, so to speak, tape stock,
Right.
and you have dropped back in your brain to a point earlier in your life, is that person still you? And should they be allowed to make decisions for your physical being?
Right.
That's what
that's a debate. There's a debate there. But euthanasia, no, my view has always been the same.
Oh, Crowley, I love it. I didn't even want 27-year-old me in charge of life decisions while I was 27-year-old me.
Yeah.
He was an entirely different creature.
Very much so.
Fair enough. Yeah, if my kids have kids, my goal is to be the don't tell them to do that, mom, grandma. So Brenda's mom was back to where her sisters were little, so around her early 20s. That's where she settled after jumping around years.
Yeah.
And again, that starts to bring up some really important questions. Is who the hell was 20-year-old you?
Yeah.
And is that the same person that should be in control of like 60, 70, 80, 90-year-old you and what's happening to you?
Well, how many wheels do we execute that's 20, 30, 40 years old?
Fair point. Though oddly, a will, of all the things in the universe, is like second to making a financial purchase in things that you can do with the lowest amount of brain power legally.
Yeah.
All you have to know to create a will, you can be diagnosed with dementia out the ass. You can still write a will as long as you can name your assets and who the hell you want to give them to.
I thought you had to still know the date and the president.
Nope.
Really?
Do you know your assets? And can you name who you want to give them to?
Interesting.
And you don't even have to be good at either.
Okay.
As long as you can demonstrate that I want to leave my car to my son. That's a legal will.
Wow.
Legal will. As long as there's no confusion, like if you have 6 sons, there's confusion, that's a problem. If you have one son and one car, you know your assets and you know who you want to leave them to. Thank you. Have a great day.
Wow.
You can have a legally binding will. You knew what you were doing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder where they're going to outlaw the brown paper wills.
Oh, so basically, like, as in wills that aren't like normal legal fare.
Right.
you wrote it on the back of a napkin kind of wills, like I leave all my stuff to my cocktail waitress, blah blah blah, sign. Oh, we got two drunks over in the corner who signed too.
Right.
I don't think you'll ever get rid of that.
I think it'll be interesting on how that plays out.
Oh, share and share alike is a valid will in West Virginia.
Yes.
Basically.
Oh,
yeah, Shannon points out you have to have 3 witnesses for those. Excuse me, my great uncle had one. Yeah, so yeah, those 3 drunks in the corner and this cocktail waitress.
So, Joe, what time was I supposed to get up this morning?
9:30. Oops. Apparently, I got the alarm set for the wrong half of the day.
Yep.
In my defense, that alarm, that clock was driving me crazy trying to set it.
Okay.
Just in my defense.
So I've paged the assistant if you can hear it.
Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry about that. All right, so let's go over to relationship advice. This one's quite interesting.
All right. Should I break up with my friend who always makes me feel exhausted? My 32-year-old female friend, 31 female, and I recently got a lot closer. We were always acquaintances at the same friend functions, but over the past couple of months, we started hanging out a lot more. Initially, I thought it was great because we have a lot of similar interests and we have fun together. But after a few months, I started to realize that I felt really burnt out and exhausted by the thought of hanging out with her. She sends me messages all day long about random stuff and messages of me wanting to hang out every week. In addition to that, I started to realize how she's always making judgmental comments. Most of our conversations revolve around her making fun or criticizing other people's preferences for things, what they wear, how they decorate their house, how they choose to color their hair. And in addition to that, she would always jokingly make fun of my preferences as well. She made fun of the fact that I wanted to go see the Barbie movie on opening weekend, and then she went to go see it on opening weekend after making fun of me. Similar experiences to those. I did tell her that I didn't like it, like when she did that, and her response was that she was just poking fun, but I told her it didn't make me feel good regardless, and she said she was sorry and would try to do better. Now, several weeks later, I recently found out that I got rejected from my dream job after spending over a year trying to pivot careers and after 10 rounds of interviews. I was devastated and so upset when I found out I didn't get the position. She was out shopping at the time when I texted her that I didn't get the job and was bummed, and her only response was, "You'll find another job," and proceeded to change the conversation back to about some sunglasses she was trying on. After she tried on some sunglasses, she asked if I wanted to meet for lunch, and I said I wasn't really in the mood to hang out because I was feeling really depressed, and she didn't address my message at all and just changed the topic to talk about something else she wanted to talk about. I texted her at the end of the day saying I was really disappointed that she didn't bother to offer me any consolation or care, and that I really needed the support during this time because of how shattered I was. Her response was that she can't read my mind and that I need to voice my needs to her, and that if I was really upset, I could have called her if I wanted to talk. Honestly, I thought this was a shit response. I vocalized twice that I was extremely upset, and she didn't so much as bother to text and ask how I was doing or offer any words of encouragement. I feel like any empathetic person would have at least some words of consolation and shouldn't have to be prompted in order to do so. I also felt like she shifted the blame on me, implying that I should have told her to console me, when in actuality, I feel that this should be a basic response, bare minimum, from a friend. So I told her I needed a break and would want to talk about our friendship in person once I'm ready. Is this friendship worth salvaging? I feel like she's not going to change, but I also feel sad to not be friends with her because she is definitely a fun person to hang out with, and we have a lot of similar interests and like to do the same stuff. I just feel like I can't be around her often because she expects a lot of attention, but isn't willing to support me emotionally when I need her. It's not a give and take relationship. It's her just taking almost all the time so that I feel exhausted. Should I give her a chance and try to work this out?
No. Sorry. No. She isn't investing into the friendship. She's more acting like an associate, so she should be treated like an associate.
I almost think this friend just got promoted to the wrong position.
Yeah.
As in, like, this is someone you tried to become best friends with, and you basically put her in your best friend category, like the bestest of best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a position for which she is not qualified for you.
No.
She is not a best friend. I think we can all hands down agree she is not that emotionally invested in you.
Right.
To be your bestest friend.
Well, and see, here's the thing. I think people and I blame Meta for this. People misclassify friends often. The way I do it a lot is I classify, will I call this person at 4 o'clock in the morning because I'm working late? No, not my best friend.
And see, and going with Crowley's response, in Joe's defense, Aeson does tend to work best during vampire hours.
Yes, I do.
But that's neither here.
Yes. And we have data to prove that.
We have data to prove it. Now, I just think she got over-promoted.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you definitely need to downgrade her.
Right.
She, at best in this situation, I think you remain friends with her.
Mm-hmm.
But she needs out of that best friend position because she's not fulfilling it. She's not expressing any desire to be your best friend. The person that you call when you don't get the job. Right. Who's going to be there, who's going to bring the ice cream, who's going to tell you, like, pump you up and make you feel better and do all the things. I don't inherently think, though, that means you have to, like, quit her entirely.
Right.
Because I think some friends are just fun people to be around and you just don't invest.
Right.
Like, I'm not heavily invested. I don't really care about your kids. Like, I don't care about your kids. Let them go play in traffic. I mean, I'm not sitting over here going, like, I would take it as a personal affront if anything happens to your children.
Right.
Like, I'm going to be there as a backup mama bear to, like, beat some ass.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, that's a best friend.
She's a group friend. She's not really a lifelong friend. She's not a work friend. She's not a situational friend. She's a group friend. And also a low-dose friend, meaning one you can take for a limited amount of time, set the alarm on your watch. She's probably somewhat social, so that's why I say she's an associate friend or an acquaintance. She's not an acquaintance.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I use some slightly different wording, but yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, she's not a best friend, though.
No.
But I think you really tried to, like, and I don't think she ever did that to you. I don't think she made you her best friend.
Right.
I think maybe she has a pattern of this and or is lonely.
Yes.
And is looking for a friend.
Yeah.
And maybe had an idea that you could become that, but it's obviously not working out. Maybe she doesn't know how.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, there are some people who just, like, it's like getting a puppy to be friends with them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to teach them not to shit on the carpet. You got to teach them all the things.
Right.
In order for them to be a good friend.
Well, and you bring up a great point there. Training your friends. It's highly important to do. You know, my friends know to leave me alone. I will talk to you when I'm ready to talk to you. Go away. And that takes a bit for a person to get used to. It's like, no, I don't need you here. I don't need you underneath my feet. It is not Thursday. It is not Wednesday. Go somewhere.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you know, hi, there's a time and a place.
Right.
But no, seriously, I think some people, like, I think the model we have for, like, friends and best friends
Mm-hmm.
is that you develop them in childhood.
Right.
And they either put up with your shit,
Uh-huh.
or they very quickly tell you that was unacceptable friend behavior and this is what we're going to do instead.
Right.
Probably not that nicely. And again, that
Probably
comes with some putting up with some people's shit.
Right.
But you get the message that friendship has limits. Even best friends, there's limits.
Yeah.
Like, do not cross, or this is what's expected. This is how you friend.
Right.
I think there are some people that just don't get it.
I
Like,
agree.
they either, you know, they were loners in school
Mm-hmm.
with no friends for whatever reason. Maybe by choice, maybe by social ostracism, maybe because, you know, their mom was some horrible person, whatever. They don't get it, and then they end up like 30-something-year-old adults
Mm-hmm.
with a string of failed friendships,
Mm-hmm.
and they just don't know.
Right. But here's my other thing with this. If your housekeeper isn't cleaning your house right, you fire them. If your lawn guy doesn't cut the grass the angle you want it to, you fire them. If your employee doesn't work well, you fire them. If, you know, your car isn't working, you either repair it or you fire it. Why do people have such a hard time firing friends?
Usually because of the level of emotional investment.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of it's God, I never can remember this when I need it. It's one of the biases, and it basically has to do with like, once you take an action towards a thing, you will continue taking actions towards that thing, even when the actions no longer best serve you.
Okay.
So it's what I think it's commitment bias. Anyway, it has a lot, like, it gets used a lot in sales and marketing. Is
Okay.
like, if you can get someone to sign up and pay $1,
Uh-huh.
the people that pay the $1 are more likely to continue to spend money
Okay.
because they've already made a choice to spend $1.
Mm-hmm.
They will continue to confirm their commitment and continue down the path. So if you can get them to sign up for the $1 freebie, so to speak, pay the $1, and then you have a $100 course, they're more likely to buy the $100 course. Now, once they bought the $100 course, they're more likely to buy the $250 course. And once they bought the $250 course, they're more likely to buy the $5,000 course.
Okay.
And it's why you see a lot of, like, these weird little get rich quick schemes do, like, really, like, low cost offers.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, you go through that class and you go through that class, like, when you look at it, because you don't do it, but you look at it and it's like you start at $1 and then it's $100 and then it's $250, and it just keeps going up, because the further you go, the more committed you are. And you just, even when you know that, like, you're getting less value or you're not getting anything at all,
Mm-hmm.
you have a hard time going backwards. Like, you feel like if you keep going forward, it's going to reward you.
Well, there's got to be a cookie somewhere in this for people. I don't know. I don't have that. Like, I have a very, like, my friends have to be, you know, like, I have a very strong loyalty thing. Like, if they're not loyal, you know, I'm very upset with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, but here's a scenario. If you meet someone and they're really nice to you,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then they do something that, like, okay, it's borderline, like, it's not wholly inappropriate, but it's like maybe a little inappropriate, or better yet, you hear from a friend they did something.
Uh-huh.
You didn't see it, you didn't witness it, but you heard it from another friend that they did something
Okay.
that isn't totally horrible.
Right.
You know, like they slapped another friend, is what you heard they did.
Uh-huh.
Would you inherently destroy the friendship over that? Or would you connect with them and hear them out? And then are you going to be more likely to believe what they tell you in that moment?
Right.
Or are you going to be like, no, someone told me you hit a friend. I'm
Right.
done.
Right.
And literally that can sometimes be like the first step, is once you commit to believing them,
Mm-hmm.
when you hear the next thing about them, you're less likely to believe what you hear and believe them. Oh, I didn't do that. You, like, that's just a total misrepresentation.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you're going to buy that, and then more than likely, most people will continue. It's how abusive relationships sometimes end up,
Right.
is that once you forgive the first thing,
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely to forgive the second thing, even though it's worse and you're getting hurt more. And then you
Right.
forgive the third thing, even though it's worse and you got hurt more.
Right. But no, like, you know, right now I'm a little tipped at one of my friends. Everyone knows I'm trying to build the TikTok following so that we can take the podcast to the TikToks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm scrolling through my friend's page and, you know, thought they were a very good friend. Apparently not, because they're doing this, you know, hey, go follow such and such. That isn't me. And isn't part of their, like, audience. I'm like, oh, okay, so I see how this is. Got it. Okay. So, you know, it's like, put that in the back burner and sit back and watch the behavior. Because I was like, nope, not friend.
Okay. I think for most people, there's usually a buildup.
Yeah.
It is, and that's what I'm getting to, is that it typically has to really build until you can no longer ignore it. And it was like one bad thing is like, okay, that's forgivable. Two bad things, okay, that's forgivable. Three bad things, this is getting old, but forgivable. Four
Right.
bad things, and then it has to hit a level usually where you are staring disbelief in its eyes and going, there's no way.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you look backwards and go, oh my God, I cannot believe I just did all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally what you see in like LuLaRoe.
Yeah.
And the people that got bought in on the first level and believed all the hype, and then they went up a level, and not only were they dealing with the people coming in, but then they're dealing with people above them going, well, that's not exactly true.
Right.
But that's okay, because it all works.
Right.
And then they go up a level, and they get a little more of that. But then when they finally get smacked with something and they turn around and go, this is a crock of shit.
Right.
They just sit there in disbelief, one, of what they've done and what they contributed.
Mm-hmm.
But like, all the pieces were there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You gave me all the little nuggets. I had them the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I still kept doing this.
Right.
And I cannot believe myself.
Right.
I think for friendships, sometimes it's the same way. I think for bad relationships, it's sometimes the same way.
Mm-hmm. Crowley has a good point here.
Okay. Crowley says, for me, it's hard to let go of people because it's hard enough for me to let down my walls and shields. It does feel like a waste of my investment when I have to cut people out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's understandable. But understand that that's not a waste of your investment. Your investment was to get something out of that exchange. whether it's growth, experiences, something like that. The continued investment is the waste.
Well,
Does that make
but
sense?
again, it does, but again, I think sometimes we have this like tendency to believe that, okay, maybe the problem's me.
Right.
And if I just invest a little more, like I can fix it.
Yeah.
Like, if we spend more time together, I can fix the fact they're racist.
No.
Like, I'll show them and tell them and explain it to them, and they're really smart and intelligent, and they'll hear me, and like,
Yeah.
And
No.
that could be true. It could
No.
be true. Like, there's some stories of people that meet someone that totally changes their perspective on racism or whatever it is. It's really hard to admit to oneself that you're not that person.
Right.
You might not be that person. You might be, but you're most likely not that person.
Yeah. Well, I say this. I might be the psychic whisperer. I might be a psychic. I am not the jackass fixer or the jackass whisperer.
Yeah, no. I had to learn that about myself in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did. I had a friend, bless his heart, dating another friend of mine.
Mm-hmm. Here's problem one.
Well, and I'm fine with it. Like, cool, y'all are having a relationship. That's great. Y'all have fun. And then I started getting phone calls from the girlfriend in this situation.
Uh-huh.
About like the latest horrible thing her boyfriend did.
Uh-huh.
Which was truly horrible.
Uh-huh.
Like, I mean, not in a like beat her kind of way, but just like, oh my God, he said what? Like, the one that killed me was when he legitimately looked. Now, granted, there was a few years of age difference, so I think it was like he was 16, she was like 14, turning 15 when they first got together. So, like, there was a little age difference there. But the one that killed me was the night that he apparently looked her dead in the eye and said, "I'm just using you for experience." And I'm just like, I'm throwing my hands up right there. I can't. Oh my God.
Experience of what? How to actually be human? To walk upright? I mean,
I'm just sitting there like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, the fact that you would ever think that you can turn to a teenage girl and say that line.
Right.
Huh. Wow. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I don't even want to know what you mean.
Sure.
Like, because my brain can go to a few places and none of them are good. No. None of them are good.
Well, and what gets me, and it like that comment about I'm only using you for experience, I would look at him and said, well, you might want to be using me for improvement because your experience sucks.
I could see my friend, like, she needed those words back in the 90s.
Wow.
Like, she needed those.
He wasn't
I was like, my flipping jaw hit the floor that night. Mm-hmm. I'm like, he said what?
Yeah.
Like, because I'm sorry, there had been some like stupid things he had said, like stupid things men say. Up to this point.
Oh, I have a list.
Like, well, I think what he said might have been a little bit like garbage, but I think what he kind of meant might have been this. Like socially awkward teenage male says stupid thing.
Right.
But that was the one I was like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
What are we trying to experience here? But on the other side of that, I don't know. I think we're going to read Crowley's line, and then I'm going to tell you the dumbest pickup line I've heard. You can tell me the dumbest pickup line you've heard. And the advice is fire the friend yesterday.
Yeah, pretty much. At least demote them. Dear God.
Fire.
Fire.
They drain her energy. It's like some clients and places that you go, and it's like, nope, go to the shower. You ain't bringing that shit in my house.
All right. So Crowley says, yes, the idea of am I the lowest common denominator of the problem? The urge to blame ourselves for the faulty behavior.
Right, but it's not your faulty behavior. It's their faulty behavior. And they may be the lowest common denominator in the situation. That's always the more interesting one there is, are you the denominator or are you the top number? I always prefer to be the top number.
I don't know. I think we all have to have that moment at least. I don't think we have to live there. I do think it's a reality check is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it me? Am I being unreasonable? Is there any version of this I could have misheard or misunderstood?
Uh-huh.
Like, did I do something that I know of to cause this?
Right.
And then, no, if you can legitimately sit there and go, I cannot think of a thing, then you start to move forward as I'm not the problem. That I'm aware of. Now, if I am the problem, I need you to tell me that.
Right.
And then I also have to sit there and go, am I being gaslit so that someone can get out of trouble?
Always.
Or, is this a legitimate issue, problem, complaint, or concern that they're bringing to my attention? Like, I am unaware. Like, I didn't think about that. Is that legit? I'm not saying that's a perfectly, like, zero faults possible approach. But I think it's a legit one in a lot of situations. To go, okay, like, does that fit?
Right.
Or is that a crock of shit?
And it's always a crock of shit.
No, I don't think it's always a crock of shit. I think sometimes people have a lack of personal awareness. I don't think that's always the problem.
Right.
But I think there are some people that do sometimes do things without being personally aware of what they just did.
Right. All right. So, no, you're not the asshole this week for bringing your dad home from a nursing home full of roaches and bed bugs. Even though you're buying him a 30-pack a day, I do recommend Bud Light so that at least we can keep the sugar content down.
Hey, there you go.
All right. So what is your worst pickup line ever?
That I've had used on me?
Yes.
This is the problem with, like, trying to use pickup lines on me. I'm oblivious most of the time.
Okay.
So if someone used a bad pickup line, it didn't register.
All right.
I'm kind of useless for those. Like, if it's that bad, and even if it's good, I'm not going to register.
Well, at least I didn't make that chart because I've had some cringy ones. But I do have a record one. So you got to remember, I used to travel a lot. So, I'm in South Carolina. It's a good story. When I'm in a bar in South Carolina and a guy looks at me and goes, "Gee whiz, you look better in a new pair of snow tires. Can I ride you home?" I said, "No, I'm more of a summer guy."
Now, here's the important point. or important question. Did this inevitably lead to something happening with them, or was that it? Like, nope, that was so bad, I'm shutting you down.
Oh, he was shut down real hard. Very, very hard shut down. Very, very not nicely told, I don't think so. Was the best way to put it. On air was, I don't think so. And he got sent home, but not by me.
I mean, I don't know. For me, sometimes cringy would work. I mean, like, seriously, there's a part of me that loves a dad joke, and like cringe could get me.
Right.
Like, it could be the worst pickup line ever, and if I register it as a pickup line, I might go, you know what? That was bad. But what the hell? Like, you made an effort, you know? Oh, and Brenda's like shaking my head sad. Oh, Brenda says, depends if it makes me laugh at least.
Uh-huh. All right, guys. I'm a little tired. I gotta get off here. We'll see you guys on Thursday night for coffee and tea. At 8 o'clock. And yes, my schedule will be updating. It should be updating through the night. So be sure to check out new times. They are not the published times that we put out. We took a very hard look at the schedule and said, someone's trying to kill the Aeson, and it's the Aeson.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
He
was trying to unalive himself with work.
So with that, take it away, Joe.
All right. So, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Van, Caitlin Bell, and Devin. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
And good night, y'all.
Good night.